Welcome back to an emergency Hearthstone report. We have some big news to deliver. We have something to speak on here. We have a new balance patch announced. Yet another one. It seemed to never stop in this expansion. So we're going to get some card changes. And of course, this is happening kind of in the way that we fear during our ongoing tournament. So at the end of this, we're going to quickly announce and go through how exactly we'll respond, how the tournament will continue, because we're not done with it. But these changes will heavily affect the decks that were submitted, unfortunately, so we have to have a change of plans there, so stick around for the end of the video where we'll talk about how that works. But first, what do we got?
Well, let's start with the first nerf that they listed here, which conveniently... Actually, no, that's not. Let's talk about, first of all, that, of course, all crafted cards that are being nerfed are available for a full dust refund for 2 weeks after the patch. The patch, mind you, comes out on July 14th. That is
Next
Tuesday.
You can dust them for full refund,
yes.
Which is always good.
Now let's get into the actual first nerf, which is, conveniently enough, the only one that directly affects my lineup. Now, of course, indirectly, meta shifts and blah, blah, blah. Dragonqueen Alexstrasza.
Yes.
The battle cry now adds 2 other random dragons to your hand that they now cost 1 rather than 0.
So they have finally decided to go after this card. This is maybe the biggest one of the bunch, and it's of course neutral card. This might be the most impactful one, and this is going to be kind of significant in my opinion. I think this is going to weaken this card quite a bit.
Yeah, it makes it harder to play it online. I mean, you can still play it online, but you're not going to get anything out of it. Mm-hmm. If you're playing it at 10, or after, at 10 mana, you can play one of the dragons alongside it rather than both. Now, oftentimes you do keep one dragon back if it has like a battle cry that you either don't want in that situation or some other sort of effect. You know, you get a Deathwing, you get a Nozari, you might not want it. So it's not entirely implausible that it doesn't affect your turn that much. Oftentimes you don't have anything to do with the one leftover mana anyways. It's gonna definitely reduce the potential to get a huge impact on turn 9. So I think primarily this is gonna make this a bit delayed, and of course the actual board swing of it comes delayed by 1 turn. So you're not
slow down a little bit.
Gonna play 3 dragons on turn whenever. Well, you're definitely not gonna play them 9, but even on 10, you're only gonna play 2 of them, and then another one the turn after. Not that huge in terms of if you're trying to establish a big board with it. If you're trying to win with it or trying to save yourself by looking for something like a Nozari, for example, which happens, or you're trying to win with something that pushes damage or something, not a big difference. So it's mostly for those actually, like, we're still on a decently even playing field and trying to flip the game around here. So
it's going to be interesting to see if, for one, the sort of the fringe Highlander decks, like there's rogues, for example, that like GALAKROND rogues that actually, GALAKROND shamans, that there is a Highlander variety, Highlander option to play. If the change to this specific card actually tips it in against that favor, and also card decks like the Control Warlock, the GALAKROND Warlock, that is not a Highlander deck but includes cards like Dragonqueen because it draws so much, it goes so long, might end up cutting this card out of the rotation.
Yeah, and this is I'm saying this more for myself than for other people because there's not a lot of people playing it, but Highlander Zoo Warlock is a deck that exists, and some people play it. And I was about to say, I had the choice whether or not I was going to include it, and I decided that oftentimes you're not going to get that much out of it.
Yeah.
And
now especially,
but I was about to say, this was one of those that was like right on the cusp, and I think this solidifies that decision to not include it.
I think this will make this card a little bit more rare. What else do we have?
Oh, and actually, there was 2 that directly affect my lineup. I misspoke earlier. Corsair Cash. It's not gonna affect me that much, but the weapon now does not get the attack buff anymore. It still gets +1 health. You still draw it, but it doesn't get +1 attack anymore.
Now, people have pointed out that like all the warriors that use it mostly use weapons for their turn-based effect and need durability more than attack. When you look at Ankar, the Livewire Lance, Wrench Caliber, most of the warrior weapons currently really being used, even if you want to go Bulwark of Azeroth for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They have a turn-based effect, so whenever you attack. That doesn't get limited, but not being able to deal 3 with a lot of those, with Ankar, with the Livewire Lance in the beginning, is quite impactful, because 3 health is, especially for a minion in the early game, is sort of like that benchmark that you really would like to hit.
Yeah, of course, the two of us are bring Pirate Warriors, so you are also looking at Arcanite Reapers here. Those seem a little more affected, but effectively you're still just, quote-unquote, reducing them from dealing 18 damage to 15.
Mm-hmm.
That is a bit of a significant difference, but I think you still get a lot of big chunky hits in there, even though you don't have the attack buff.
This nerf is not going to kill warriors. It just makes it a little bit more tame.
A little bit less convenient. We've seen it before with cards like Greenskin and Upgrade, where you don't necessarily play it on the turn where you play the weapon. Oftentimes, you still just you tempo out the weapon and you attack with the weapon the turn you play it, and then you upgrade it the turn after. Still effectively sacrificing a point of damage there, but not caring because you get the extra attack in, especially with the effect-based ones, and that's kind of how I see this.
And all reliable regular customer Demon Hunter is in the house again with a couple nerfs. This is like the gazillionth time that you're taking a shot at this class, and what is it this time?
Well, first of all, there's a couple. I mean, you can see it on the screen.
True.
Metamorphosis now deals the hero power you get from Metamorphosis now deals 4 damage instead of 5. Everything else remains the same. Speaking of stuff that affects our tournament, like we've seen a lot of people use Metamorphosis to great effect.
Yeah, meta has been used very well.
And in an aggressive deck, or I guess even more so the tempo deck, losing those 2 points of damage is going to be kind of significant.
It's true. What else?
Kane Sun Fury, I think this is one of the smaller nerfs as well. Again, now has 4 health instead of 5. Makes it easier to remove him, but people do use it as a push damage rather than...
The effect stays the same.
Yeah.
And his attack or his charge damage of course dealt also stays the same.
And most importantly, his cost stays the same, which I think is
that's
the bigger one almost for push damage. Even if you only had 2 attack, you're still... If you're using him for a lethal, you're still only losing 1 point of damage, which can make the difference between lethal and not. And generally with all of these, even if they are small nerfs, they're going to still impact the win percentages somewhat because those edge cases do exist.
Exactly.
But you're still going to be able to play all of your like burst damage cards just the same with it. And in this case, it's really only relevant if you try to stick him.
One of those burst damage cards, Warglaive of Aznaroth, also is getting a nerf. That's one that's kind of came a little bit later into the tempo Demon Hunter meta. In the beginning, wasn't really played all that much. People left it out, but then
because all other cards became more expensive with Demon Hunter.
But at some point, you also recognize like the potential that attacking can have, because you have so much health typically to play with, and whenever the Demon Hunter tended to lose, it got overwhelmed on board, didn't get back. And this is a card that this deck likes to employ oftentimes as a control tool to just clear big things up, take 15 damage, and still give themselves a good shot to win the game. It's now going to 6 mana. Up from 5.
Yeah.
Seems fine. I can't really gauge how necessary this is, because Demon Hunter is no longer as dominant of a force as it used to be. Of course, still a tier 1 deck, still top deck, obviously. So I can see why they would go for it. These 3 combined, though, I'm not sure how appropriate it is. We said it before, of course. Will this kill Demon Hunter? Will this balance it out to be fair now? And this is like the 5th time that they've taken a shot at it, so in their opinion, it's still not balanced. And they're thinking that this will finally push it over the edge and get it in line.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned it. It wasn't always in the Tempo Demon Hunter, and I think in part that is because the whole Priestess package was cut.
Yeah.
You had Priestess of Fury, and then you had the
Shadow Weaver came in.
You had the Fell Screamer, I think it's what's called, the one that reduces the
cost.
cost.
That's what you ran in the beginning, yeah.
And there's no slots open, and then they nerfed /buffed /changed the Twin Slice, which...
That's still in.
Yeah, and with the Warglaives, the Twin Slice, I mean, those 2 cards together become better, because the more attack you can have on the Warglaives, the better. So it makes sense that the balance of Warglaives was kind of incidentally affected by all the other nerfs, so... Absolutely. And in a positive way for the most part, so that's where that comes from.
Dragoncaster.
Yes.
Is next. So Dragoncaster, in case you didn't know, is a 6 mana mage minion that precedes every puzzle box you've ever seen. This is the one that Highlander control mages, all of them basically play. They're played on 6, and then they either draw Power of Creation or they draw Puzzle Box for Yoxaron. And of course itself, not an impressive card at all. This is very similar to the nerf, in case people from the old school of Hearthstone remember, to Spiteful Summoner, which was a card that would cast that would draw a spell from your deck and then summon a minion equal to its cost, and they also bumped that up, I believe, exactly from 6 to 7 cost as well. So,
a card from your deck
at the time.
It didn't draw it. That's an important difference because card draw is valuable. But yeah, So yeah, Dragoncaster up from 6 to 7. I mean, yeah, they're
delays the impact of it a little bit. I can't hate this at all. I think this is a very good change. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want silly cards that early that can swing games that early. I still there is an argument to be made that it just shouldn't, a mechanic like that shouldn't really be a thing.
Yeah, but the more expensive the card becomes that is on the less impactful the mechanic itself is.
Exactly, because the probability will go down, the win rate or the swing rate will go down by a turn, or will delay by a turn, and it might make it a little bit more balanced.
For example, you could also have like a 10 mana minion that has just unconditional like battle cry, next spell cost 0, or next spell this turn cost 0, and then
I mean like a Caligoose.
kind of, yeah. And then that just is like, oh yeah, you got some extra stats, congrats, right? So in that vein, the effect isn't that powerful. Of course, allowing you to play stuff earlier is the main use here, and I mean, what's the craziest thing they get is Puzzle Box, which isn't even always good. It usually is, but
it's usually positive. Yeah, Power of Creation is usually pretty good.
Power of Creation is pretty good, but also Power of Creation is 8?
Yeah.
So getting it 2 turns earlier is a bit relevant. Getting it 1 turn earlier barely matters. Yeah. That being said, another thing you're going to get a turn later is Fungal Fortunes.
Fortunes for the Spell Druid. A lot of people run it as the best keep in the deck, notoriously on the Mulligan, because more often than not, it will draw you 3 cards for 2. It's an inverse Arcane Intellect. Now, being at 3 cost, I still think it's a better Arcane Intellect, because most of the time you'll draw 3 cards. Because there's so many spells, you'll keep them all.
I've heard people talking about maybe only running 1 Fungal Fortunes in the future. I don't know if that is going to be how it goes. I don't necessarily think so.
Consideration.
Because also just consistency of draw, right? Because if you cut a second copy of a card, you don't necessarily run 2 copies of every card because you want to play it twice, but more so because you want to guarantee that you draw it.
Increase the probability that you'll get it, yeah.
So, I don't know, we'll see. I still think it's as you said, it's still a good card. It still has the effect that you want it in the deck. Of course, it also matters that, for example, now, if you want to play that, the same turn you play Glowfly, to get more cards with Glowfly, it's going to cost you more mana to do that as well.
Or Mount Seller cycling, all sorts of things.
So, I think it's going to be significantly less relevant.
The cost of spells is a big concept in that type of...
Yeah, as I was going to say, I think it's significantly less relevant that you can now not play it on turn 2.
Yeah.
It's more relevant that if you combine it with other stuff, it adds up.
And the not play is now coining it on 2. Probably.
Yeah. You might like keeping the coin because Glowfly and stuff, right? That being said, GALAKROND the Nightmare.
That's the rogue one.
It is the rogue GALAKROND, and they have all 3 versions listed. I'm just gonna cut to the chase here. Cards drawn by rogue GALAKROND now cost 1 instead of 0. Notably, it doesn't reduce the cost to 1. It sets the cost to 1, which is to say...
0 costs 1 still.
It's kind of like the really dumb Ibeam interaction, where if it's outcast and it costs 0, it still costs 1 because it overrides the cost. Still think they should have changed it, but that's neither here nor there. This is arguably the most significant nerf in this entire patch.
I don't know, I think Dragon Queen probably is a bit more significant, but this is definitely, it's also a big one, because it's the main mechanic of the deck that it is in, right? And having those burst turns with the GALAKROND. Now, still, you play the GALAKROND, you can still play 3 of the cards that you've drawn.
That is assuming you played on 10.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of GALAKRONDs be played earlier.
Exactly. And that's exactly the window where you want to kind of interrupt it and say, if it comes out at 7, we don't want 4 free cards. Same idea with the Alexstrasza, really.
I mean, yeah.
9, you don't want to play free cards right away.
Effectively, the Alexstrasza one is a 2-mana nerf. This is a 4-mana nerf, more often than not. And because you generally tend to not play the GALAKROND without the full effect. I mean, there is definitely situations where you do.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that. But on average, this is going to be in more than 3-mana nerf, I think. And...
that is more impactful play sometimes.
Yeah.
At the higher rolls.
And that is also, of course, if you look at some of the other cards that go alongside that deck. You look at Advent Van Cleave, you look at Questing Adventurer. Those are also going to be very impacted by that because the rogue really likes playing a lot of cards in one turn, not just because of the cards themselves, but also
this enabled it really well.
Because
you still have the Togwaggle, of course, with the 3 free cards.
But so this is not just gonna make the drawn cards more expensive. It's also gonna
I like it though. It's just a little bit of a small break on how insane it can get, right?
Yes.
I think this is a good change because it doesn't weaken the mechanic to the point where it's not going to be played or anything. It just caps the top 5% of outcomes to just cut that off. Be like that. We don't want to see that.
Here's the thing, right? Do you still play Questing Adventure in the deck?
We'll see. Maybe I could see that.
There's still a lot of small cards. Yeah. The other thing is, do you play less small cards in the deck?
A lot of questing adventures come out before the Galakronds, and then again you still have ways to generate free cards.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. We've seen definitely Galakronds low roll and get very cheap cards, and that feels even worse when the cost reduction is less. And then on the other hand, you've got a lot of the questing adventure high rolls not being possible at all anymore. Yeah. This is definitely the one that I would think, well, besides maybe Demon Hunter just because of how many cards were hit, but I think this is the one that's going to most affect the actual structure of the deck as a whole.
Exactly.
You're not going to just, like, for the Dragonqueen, it's like, okay, some decks might drop it, that other decks are just going to keep it. Corsair Cash, probably not going to affect how much it's played, it's just going to affect the impact of the play itself. This one is the main
mechanic, so the deck will adjust to this.
Exactly. I think Fungal Fortunes, maybe some people try around with it, but at the end of the day, if you play Spellgrid, you're going to play Fungal Fortunes.
Yeah, you're not going to drop it. It's
Galakrond Priest, of course, Rogue. Of course, if you play Galakrond Rogue, you're going to play Galakrond.
You got to play it.
Yes.
Still be played.
Maybe you don't play Questing Adventure. Maybe you do. I don't know. But there is definitely some very far-reaching implications of this. Playing maybe a couple more expensive cards to get the impact a bit higher again of the battle cry. Maybe dropping some of the cards that go in hand with playing a lot of cards in the same turn because you're not going to do it as much, which in turn means you don't have to have as many cheap cards. So there is definitely
I understand the change and why they would do it. It's basically we were allowing the rogue to still turn it up to 10, but it's no longer able to turn it up to 11. Just the couple of outcomes that happen every once in a while that really aren't interesting, that shouldn't really be there, kind of cutting us off a little bit. So I do like this change. I think it's gonna be just fine, and this is how it should be.
I don't hate it. I still think that this is gonna be one of the more significant changes from this patch, and again, I still think that this could have a lot of unforeseen consequences to the way the rogue decks are built, or at least a lot of indirect consequences.
A little bit, yeah, because the deck morphs around this, right?
And interestingly enough, that brings up a question about stealth package versus secret package. Because if, for example, you say, okay, I do increase the average cost of cards in my deck a little bit, maybe, I drop the questing adventures, that sort of stuff, then all of a sudden card drop becomes less relevant, so the stealth package becomes weaker.
Your secret, maybe?
The secret package becomes more impactful.
They have stealth cards that tend to be more expensive than secret cards. It's an experiment for sure. A lot of people want to play this thing.
I'm just saying this is gonna, at the end of the day, this is gonna affect a lot more numbers than you think.
Yeah. Exactly. Because they'll still be optimized somehow.
Yeah. And I guess now would be the good time to talk about our tournament.
Yes, our tournament. So, here's the deal, right? We are in the midst of the tournament, and of course this had to happen. I kind of prophesized it before. We hoped it didn't. But with how volatile the meta has been in the eyes of Blizzard with the Demon Hunter class, which is to blame for most of this, for most of these changes, we have seen on average 3 nerfs every 2 months so far, or even more than that. So it was almost to be expected that throughout the entire expansion this sort of thing would happen. And of course, the tournament, the way that it's structured, people bring their decks and they run for the entire tournament, and the tournament takes a month. It was pretty clear we probably run into problems. I hoped it wouldn't happen, but it did now. And the way that we're going to approach this is, since this launches on the 14th, which is the next Tuesday coming up, the quarterfinals, so the quarterfinal matches, which is the round that we are currently in, are going to finish. They're going to finish up the way that we have scheduled them. They will all be played, and they'll all be played before this happens, and they will release over the next week. They'll finish up a couple days after this releasing. And we're going to have a break. We're going to have a break in the tournament of roughly a week, and we're going to give the players that are still in for the semifinals, the 8 remaining players, we'll give them 5 days until the following Sunday, so the Sunday after this, and they will be able to submit new lineups, and we'll pick it up as a sort of a second part of the tournament after that. It's really, there's no good way of doing it, because it's just we're in it right now. There's no great way of adjusting to this, but this is the only way that we feel like we can do it. We discussed this internally, and
it might seem to some people like there's other very obvious options like, oh, allow people to swap out those cards, allow people to swap out affected decks, but because if one deck all of a sudden falls out of the tournament, for example, let's just hypothetically say this just killed Demon Hunter. I don't think it did, but let's just say, right? And then people that brought decks that are built in a way to counter Demon Hunters all of a sudden become a lot weaker in effect. So there was really, for us, no good way except for to say, just bring what you think makes most sense given the circumstances. So yes, for the viewers, there's going to be a small break between the final quarterfinals game and the first semifinals game. We're trying to get these recorded as soon after the new deadline as possible and hoping to keep the break as small as possible, but this is just how it had to be.
Now, what we're not going to be doing is with the semifinals, we're not going to be redrawing the conferences. That's understandably how it should go for maximizing the fairness of the tournament. But since it's only 2 matches on either side, we're going to keep with what we have. We're going to have everybody submit their decks, and after that, we're going to reveal what they are in the new list. There's only 8 players remaining, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. 5 days to do that. Again, unfortunately, we can't draw this out by too many weeks because soon we're expecting a new expansion to be announced and launched. In August, it should be time for that.
Yeah, the deck lists that the players are submitting will be released the Monday after, so that will be Monday the 21st, I believe, on the Discord server.
I guess.
What?
20th.
I think Sunday is the 20th.
No, Tuesday is the 14th, so Tuesday is also the 21st.
Oh, right, yeah. Monday the 20th, the deck list will be publicly released on our Discord server.
Link in the description.
Yes.
Important.
So that for our viewers that are on the Discord server and that want to know what the people are bringing before they go into the matches, those will be up to date then. I'll just post them on top of the old list. I'll keep that one there until the tournament's over. But just in case you were curious about what people are bringing, what people are changing, I'm not going to have direct side-by-side comparisons, but you're going to have access to both documents if you want to see how that affected people's decisions. And
that's all it's going to be. Yeah, it's unfortunately it's not in our hands to be able to do anything about this. It's a Blizzard decision, of course. The Nerfs will come live before we were able to finish the tournament. We apologize for that because we definitely want to finish it, and this seems the best way to do it. We don't want to cut it or cancel it because of this, because people have put so much work into it, so we want to finish. But it seems like there's really nothing else that we can do about this, so this is how it has to go. And just here's the hope that in the future it's not going to happen that way anymore, and we'll have a little bit more stable metas. But that's the fairest solution that we can come up with outside of redrawing, which is not going to happen. But hopefully it's still going to be a good tournament, and we're going to see everybody in the next video. Of course, again, stay tuned. If there's a break, maybe there might be like a week of no matches. That's how it's going to go.
There will be content.
Yeah, there'll be videos, of course.
In case it wasn't obvious to you, there will be videos. Don't worry, you're not gonna get no content because of this. But the actual tournament matches, there might be some reordering of stuff.
We're gonna finish the tournament some way, somehow, and we're gonna make sure that there's not gonna be a big asterisk to whomever ends up winning their conferences, because it's still equally valid. So drop a like on the video if you did enjoy what we talked about. Let us know your opinions on the nerfs. And maybe on our proceedings also. Of course, we're open to feedback on the way the tournament's going to go. That's basically all that we had to say. So drop a like, subscribe to TrashcanTV if you are not subscribed yet, because there's videos every day, and you probably don't want to miss them. Server, Discord, the links in the description, and we'll see you in the next one. JJ.
That's it.
That's it.